for future sessions, go to bit.ly/faceparent. And please tell us also how you liked the session. That survey can be found at tinyurl.com/face-to-face survey. Has the recording started?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Face to Face, a virtual classroom. Our sessions are designed with you in mind to support your child's learning and to offer a variety of programs that help to build your knowledge and growth in various topics. We offer weekly classes which are hosted live, recorded, and then uploaded to our CPS YouTube channel for future reference. We hope you enjoy today's session entitled Read Up to Build Up, Building a Reading Community. This is part 3 of a 5-part series. Be sure to check out parts 1 and 2 on our YouTube channel. For information on future programming, please visit our website at cpsparentview.org. Thanks for attending today's session. And now, please welcome today's presenter, Ms. Lemiola Erin Cantola. Ms. Erin Cantola is an award-winning educator and author and the founder of the Critical Thinking Child, an educational consulting and tutoring company. She is passionate about giving parents the tools needed to help their children succeed academically. She provides in-person and virtual workshops using proven frameworks that foster academic achievement and critical thinking skills, while also encouraging confidence, family time, and fun. You will walk away with actionable next steps for at-home learning support. I present to you Ms. Lemiola Erin Cantola. Ms. Erin Cantola.
Okay, let me unmute myself. Thank you for such a warm welcome. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. I see some of you, some repeat attendees who attended our session last week and the one before. Welcome, welcome. I just want to welcome all of you parents at home, caregivers, everyone who is tuned in, and CPS community. All right, let's get started today. Today we have a wonderful topic, and this is part 3 of our 5-part series. So today we're going to talk about why children's books make such a great conversation starter for tough topics like race, bullying, kindness, internet safety, and all of those heavy topics that are going on with current events today. Okay, moving on. I want you to let me know how you're feeling in the chat. Okay, put in a 1 if you feel like the sleepy dog, kind of tired, had a full day of work. Put a 2 if you're somewhat awake, and 3 if you are soaring right now. Okay, because our goal is to move you. If you're a 1, we want to move you to a 2 to a 3, and a 3 to keep you soaring with this information. So type that into the chat. Okay, so we've got some 1s, 2, seems like mostly 2s. Okay, and some 3s. Awesome. I'm feeling about a 3 right now. Okay. All right, today's agenda. We're going to give a little backstory about what I have been doing in the community. So I'll share a little bit of backstory with you and how I worked with the Children's Reading Foundation of Greater Chicago and what our role was. Now, this was several years ago, but this really was the genesis of how I got involved with appreciating books as a tool to be a great conversation starter. Okay, so I'm going to share a little bit of that with you. Then we'll talk about some ideology about what makes a good children's book. Like everyone has their own favorite book they can remember when they were a child that they wanted to read over and over again. But we're going to kind of look at some criteria and what some of the experts say make a good children's book. Then we'll look at some tips for you parents and caregivers on how to get the conversation started on these tough topics. And lastly, we'll go through and give you some recommended titles and selections that you can either check out at your local library or purchase for your own home library. Okay, so let's begin. We're going to start off with the video.
When I was younger, I lived in a community called Fort Heights, and there was a library that I used to go to. My parents encouraged me to go to that library, and I got great pleasure from that. And then when I went off to college and came back into the community, I was really disappointed to find out that they had closed the library. Just the thought of children not being able to have easy access to something as simple as a book, I knew that I can make a difference. Since then, we've been working year-round, providing free services throughout Chicagoland, and that was over 4 years ago.
During our peak period, which is March through May, we can receive easily 10,000 books every 2 weeks.
We get deliveries or orders of books in from different publishers, and they come into the storage, and I make sure that they get to the proper locations.
Through our church, we support this shelter, and Lemmy was able to give us books so that every child who comes to that shelter now, they may not have anything else, but they will leave with a book in hand.
Through the Read Up Children's Program, we have been able to provide 100,000 books throughout the 4 years of service, and it has impacted the families across the Chicagoland area.
I like working with the Children's Reading Foundation because I really love the idea of giving kids their own books to take home to keep forever. I think that's the best gift that you can give a kid because it's theirs, and that gives these kids so much happiness.
Anywhere where there's a need for the books, we are willing to go.
What makes what we do so unique is that we're not only giving away free books, but that we are providing tools and strategies to the parents through the Ready for Kindergarten program.
The parents in my school community, they lack a lot of involvement, and I think the involvement stemmed from them not being comfortable with information to better service their children. All the parents received a wonderful binder, and they had tools in there to help guide them through reading, math, writing, as well as social emotional skills.
The Children's Reading Foundation of Greater Chicago has allowed us to bring in books and educational materials and conversation with our families, just in general about making sure their children are well prepared for their educational career.
The foundation has helped the bilingual community a lot because some people, they don't have that option, and by us promoting bilingual services to them is great.
You want to Spanish or English?
They want to know more, they want to volunteer, they want to be part of the foundation.
I think what makes the Chicago Reading Foundation unique in their mission is they want to empower families to help educate their children. And I think what we know about reading is that parents are the best teachers of their children.
From a statistical standpoint, the research shows that Ready does make a difference.
In a very grassroots way, Lemmy is making huge headway in the community.
Thank you, Reading Foundation.
Okay, so that was part of my history and how we got started with really getting involved in children's books. And as you can see, going out into the community to make sure that every child we can touch had a home library and parents had their tools that they needed to support their child's education from an early age. All right, so let me go back to the presentation. And are there any comments about that? You just want to make sure the YouTube video is off.
We're fine.
Okay, so we're going to move into what makes a good children's book. Every book that we donated to the Children's Reading Foundation or through the grant process and passed those out to the community, we had to read every single one of those books. So all those titles, whether we were reading in front of children or we were reading while we were doing inventory, it was just such a pleasure to see how powerful children's books are. That later I became a children's book author myself. So what does make a good book? Well, some publishers will say a good children's book or a picture book will have to tell a compelling story in 32 pages, okay? That's one person's opinion, who has it on good authority, of course, because you have to be able to tell these stories, quickly, and they have to be strung together in a way that's going to leave a message. So let's talk about that. What other criteria should we look for when we're looking for a good children's book? Well, we want to pay attention to the characters to make sure that the characters evoke or bring out strong emotions. This was a school out in Chicago Heights where we would read the stories to the children. You could see the smiles on their faces. There's Rocio Agado in the back. And we just had such a fabulous time with the children. So the characters in the stories really matter. Also, what we want to look for are stories that have an element of real life, real world experiences. So we didn't want to just focus on fairy tales and imaginary stories. We really also wanted children to have what we call informational texts or real life experiences. So many times we would look for books that talked about community leaders, a police officer, veterinarian, a firefighter, a doctor, a nurse, transportation consultant, engineer, you name it. It's just important that children began to explore the possible careers and all of the different individuals that make up a community. You also want to look for vivid illustrations. Illustrations can be very powerful. There were a number of books that did not have any words to them, okay? And these are not baby books. These are, early elementary and elementary books, and they're called wordless books. And wordless books can be incredibly powerful because it's all driven by a visual message using the illustration. So that is one criteria you want to look for. I would also recommend that you don't look for vocabulary that is too easy. Try to look for vocabulary that is challenging, or books that have words that rhyme, uses what we call figurative language, such as alliteration. So as you can see from the titles on this slide, all of the books, including my own here, Stanley the Snack Snatcher, uses a technique called alliteration. Can anybody determine what that technique? We have Chicka Chicka Boom Boom, Many Marvelous Monsters. Does anybody know what that technique is?
Repeated sounds.
Yes, repeated sounds. That's alliteration. That has been proven in the research that it allows us to learn faster, to retain information. So it's a very powerful technique when we want to get a message across. That's why a lot of books use alliteration. Okay, you also want to look for books that are just going to spark their curiosity. So the genre, sometimes you want to pick out selected books for the child, but then other times, if they're interested in a particular title or topic, maybe you can, inspire them to read more with books that they actually select because they're curious about it. So look for books that they would be incredibly curious. All three of these children I met, and we were passing out the books, and this was outside of the school during one of our summer reading experiences, and they actually sat on the sidewalk and read the book instantly. Isn't that a wonderful sight? Now, here are some tips on discussing some difficult topics. We know there's a lot of events going on in the world. Our world has totally changed during the past year, which is pretty much a 1 year anniversary since the pandemic of COVID-19 came about. The children that are born into this experience have a lot of questions. Some of it ties to their emotion of fear, some of it anger, some of it confusion. And so, as parents and caregivers, this is a very challenging time for us. Not only just with remote schooling, that seems to be a lot of the media topic, but there are some sort of social and emotional needs that we need to focus on for children, young and older children as well. So we know that you have a heavy burden right now on some of these topics. So here are some tips just as a conversation starter. Like if you had a question, how do I begin to support my child with their curiosity or their knowledge about some of the things that they're seeing on the news? Okay. Because, if we circle back to like a year ago with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and if you caught the clips in some of the protests, there were children there. There were parents who actually had their children at the protest. So these are young children that are already being exposed to this type of media, or a participant, maybe, because they're young and their parents are bringing them, but there were certainly children that we saw on the media. So we want to recommend that you monitor the exposure, make sure that you are, censoring that as a parent, and ensure that whatever you have at home and whatever you technology or device that you use to capture the media, that if that is running on sort of autopilot, that you're comfortable with the station that it's on, and if your child were to step in front of the TV, sit down and watch it, that you're going to be comfortable with what they would see. Okay, so make sure you monitor that exposure. The other thing you want to do is find out what they know. I have my own children that was informing me because they're on social media and they were getting Instagram feeds. And so their speed of information was coming a lot faster than when I would wake up and turn on the news. By the time I did that, the early morning news, they had already heard about certain situations. So it's good to have an understanding to find out how much they know. Because they're not talking about it doesn't mean that they don't know about it. Okay. I would also recommend that you ask open questions. So if they come to you with a particular topic, just ask, where did you hear that information? And what do you think about it? Even if you have a different opinion, or for the older children and the preteens and teens who are maybe hearing things from their peers and maybe formulating their own opinion, one of the best ways to have an open dialogue is to just let them talk. I find that a lot of the teenagers they just want a sounding board. Uh, they don't really want a response all the time. They want someone to listen to them, hear what they have to say. Maybe they had an opinion at school with a peer and a classmate, and that classmate shut them down. And now they're coming home to you as their parent, their guardian, and they want to share information with you. The last thing we want to do is shut them down as well. It's only going to make them more frustrated. So a lot of times, just let them speak, tell tell you what's on their mind, and ask them what they think about it. Okay, I find that to be a very good technique. Also, address their curiosity. Okay, as we sort of mentioned a little bit earlier, they are curious whether they are mentioning it or not. Um, some of them are still a little bit confused by what the whole pandemic means. It's a good idea to define that for them. Um, some students may actually think that the actual pandemic is remote learning. So if we don't clarify and we shelter them, they'll come out of this experience really naive, and that's not what we want. Okay. Don't skip over the tough topics. Okay. And this is also, sort of preaching to the choir, but then I'm also talking about myself. Like I said, my children, they seem to be learning these current events a lot faster than me because they have the social media technology. And so it's, if you haven't heard of certain terms, don't feel bad. There are a lot of terms that are new in our vocabulary depending on the generation. Okay. So this particular term here, Black, Indigenous, people of color, really signifying a lot of diversity. We're starting to see, at least I am, different surveys that have questions that they never really included before. Okay. Questions about gender, questions about going deeper into ethnicity than before. So the world is really changing. They're asking about pronouns. Okay. Does anyone know what that means when they ask about your pronoun?
Yes.
Okay, so when they're talking about the pronoun of choice, it's really how they would like to be identified, whether that's, so my pronoun would be he, her, hers, okay? And, but other people, they can have a different pronoun. They could prefer to use they as their pronoun or his or him. So we just really want to respect them and pay attention to it. And if we make a mistake in terms of how we address people, we certainly want to apologize and correct ourselves. Okay. Nobody is perfect by any means. So, what books do you share with kids during these tough times? Okay. What books do you normally share? Do any of you have any special titles that you love to read? Maybe you read that as a child and now you're passing it on to your children. Go ahead and type that into the chat. Some of your favorite book titles and what books do you share with children today? Okay. How about the tough topic of children who are afraid, having a lot of anxiety, lack of control? I can certainly attest to this when I had my children who went to college as freshmen last year, and within a few months, they had to come home because of the pandemic. And it was such a frightening situation. They left everything in their dorms and hopped on a plane as fast as they could and came home. So we made arrangements to get them home very quickly about a year ago this time. So I was a very distressed mother. I had three children going to three different colleges, and not it was very difficult. Two of them outside the state, and the airports were shutting down. So when we did get the children, thank God, home safely, um, they were quite afraid. They had a lot of pent up anxiety. And as the months went on for them to transition to remote learning, they felt like they lost some type of control of their independence. Because you see, when they went away to school, they were developing that independence that as parents, we dream of the day when our kids can, be independent, be successful, make their own way, and that felt for them that it was sort of cut short. So there was a lot of anxiety, lack of control, and it was all new for me, happening all at once. And I wanted to lean on some stories that I researched that really can be helpful, especially if you have young children. With the older children, we had conversations, we made adjustments. It wasn't always perfect, but there were even some young children who um, love school and love social engagement. And when the schools closed, it really made them very sad and anxious. So here's a story that's called There Might Be Lobsters. It's a wonderful children's book um, that talks to about a dog who is scared of the beach, the waves, the sand, just all the possibilities. And during this time of the pandemic, there were the type of fear where it was manifesting itself, where some children were uh, just making some things up because their imagination was flowing because they didn't know what it all meant, right? And we kept telling them things would get better. And as we know today, things are getting better. And so we're hopeful for that. We have a couple of vaccines out now. We're making a lot of progress. We understand what it is. The medical scientists have a good grasp on COVID 19. And so within a year, we've made wonderful strides. This is a great book to sort of calm the fears, not just with the pandemic situation, but in other situations as well. And in the end, the actual protagonist finds courage to get into the ocean, which is great. Sometimes we have children feeling stuck in terms of making a decision. Boy, oh boy, we had this a lot. Do we send them back to school and let them get more independence when the school opened up, or do we keep them here and wait it out? I have to tell you, with one of my daughters, we said she wasn't going back, and we were fine with that. And then a week before school opened up, we said, hey, you know what? Maybe it might be a good opportunity for you to go back to school. And so within a week, we had switched that decision and got her moved on to campus in North Carolina. But we were feeling kind of stuck. Here is this wonderful story of a child who has to make a difficult decision to get an opportunity to go to school. But the sad part about that, it also means leaving family and leaving, including his brother that he loved so dearly. So this is entitled When Stars Are Scattered. And the actual character is at a refugee camp in Kenya, and it's based on a true story. So if you have a child that's feeling stuck, this might be one of your recommendations. Now, discussing conflict, terrorism, and war is something that we would just rather altogether avoid. But this was a story I wanted to bring up. It is The Librarian, Alayi Mohammed Baker. Now, this is also based on a true story of during the time of conflict in Iraq. But this librarian, along with his neighbors and friends, were able to save thousands of library books. And that kind of touched my heart because you saw in the video earlier how we were passing out those books, how we were adamant about um, collecting the books and giving them out into the community. So I have a real connection with books, and that is my passion. So this is a heartwarming story about when there's conflict, when there's war around you and unpleasantness, that there's still some good. Where can we find the good? And we want to be able to teach children that. And a lot of times it's about using your energy for good. So when things around you aren't happening the way you'd like for them to be, oftentimes, I tell my children, what can you do that's good? What can you give back to those who are less fortunate than you? And maybe take your mind off of your own problems and focus on helping others. And when they do that, then they feel good about themselves and they're less worried. Here's another book that was recommended by a teacher friend of mine. Um, this is a story about Stella, who leads her community. She is just a pillar of bravery. So during the threatening times with the KKK within the town, this is in the American South, is where the plot takes place. So she leaves her community to bravery in the face of injustice and violence. Okay. So this is one that, commonly we sort of see injustice and violence through our media feed and what's happening in the community and so forth. And so this is a story that may be good to sort of resonate with young children to help them get a better understanding. Here's another one about a conflict, okay, and how conflict can get started. This one happens to be in English and Spanish, so we put both versions there. So it's as simple as a frog who sits on a rock to smell a flower. Or you're sitting there minding your own business, and then you have a mouse that snatches it away, and the conflict begins. So the title of this is Why? You know, how can we avoid conflict? How does it start? Sometimes, when the kids were on the playground, we would see the kids play tag, right? So tag, you're it. So that's such a fun game. And those things are innocent, but sometimes it can go a little bit too far when a kid who's not willing to play and, they get hit. So we just want to kind of be mindful and be able to have words that we can communicate to children about what and how conflicts get started. Let's shift into understanding inclusion and diversity. Here are some great suggestions that you might want to keep in mind. This is a story of I'm New Here. That's the title, by Anne Sibley O'Brien. It's about three students from three different um, countries: Guatemala, Korea, Somalia, and they're struggling to belong to a new school. Okay, because they're different there. And I think this is a great book. It has, definitely cultural diversity, um, the different experiences. I remember, going to school and being different, being the only African American girl, definitely in my class, and one of, three in the entire school. And just really feeling like, do I belong here? Um, and having some concerns about that. So this is a really good book that talks about that particular theme. I had mentioned before the power of vivid illustrations and wordless books and stories, and how we can challenge readers just with pictures. Well, this is one book, The Arrival, that doesn't have any words. And throughout it, it has illustrations that really speak to the story of an immigrant and the struggling experience of coming to a foreign country with everything being new and different, and leaving your home, and that, you know those are some of the real struggles of today, right? When we have people who are immigrating over, or they may actually be first generation Americans like myself, whose parents have immigrated over, and still having the ties at home and still trying to find your place to sort of fit in. When we talk about social harmony and acceptance, here's a book you may want to consider: The Skin You Live In by Michael Tyler. This is a lively story that really delivers the important message of social acceptance, social harmony, friendship, and self esteem. And really, it's a message about you personally appreciating and celebrating yourself. Another awesome book is The Proud is Blue. And The Proud is Blue is the story of, just positive message to accept people and their cultural differences. I like to have in my home library just a wide range of different books from about different cultures that are just really easy to read. Doesn't really complicate situations that kids can really understand and read over again. And so, again, that's why these children's books are just great conversation starters. You can certainly upgrade and begin to get involved in more graphic novels, series as they get older. But if you want a simple book that's just going to introduce the topic, I recommend, starting with children's books. Here is another book about a young Asian girl who um, notices that her eyes are different from her peers, um, and that she looks different. Sometimes, it's the power has to come within ourselves, and we have to tell children your beauty comes from within, and you know, everybody is unique for a reason, and everyone's not going to look the same, right? We tell them that sort of message of acceptance, and since the pandemic, I mean, it's all over the news. This is no secret to anyone that there has been, the Asian community that has felt social injustice. I think even today, I got a stream from Atlanta at a spa where there was an unfortunate tragedy that took place there that involved four Asian females, if my memory is correct, and that was just a sad situation. And they're investigating whether that is related to, or at least the news was alluding to the fact it was because the fact that they were Asian, that this sort of happened to them, and why the alleged person committed the crime. So there are different situations like that that are popping up all over the news. So it's not just towards African American people or indigenous people of color or Asians. We could see it pretty much if we look close enough across different cultures and nationalities. And so we just want to be mindful of it. Also, online safety and internet safety uh, is also a big concern and another big topic that a lot of parents are struggling to help. Now, the thing about the online safety and internet safety is that oftentimes, if it doesn't hit your kid, some parents they tend to ignore it. Well, if it didn't happen to me in my house, then it's not a big issue. And I would highly recommend that. Hopefully, that is not your view. That you be proactive in monitoring what is going on in your child's social media and how they are interacting with social media, because things may seem normal at home, but this thing is like it's like a domino effect. It just starts one by one by one, and then everything will fall down, and you'll be wondering how it all got started. I want to share with you some statistics here. So, did you know for ages 6 to 9, that 50% of 6 to 9-year-olds use social media. I did not know that. This is from a credible source, the Center for Cyber Safety and Education. They just reported this 50%. I thought that was a young age. Look at the 6-year-olds, the 7-year-olds, the 8-year-olds. 1 in 2 are using social media. Okay. So social media is, just so we're clear, it's Facebook, the Instagram, the Twitter, Pinterest, the TikTok, and whatever else is out there that I missed. Also, I found this to be a very interesting statistic as well. This is the average age when a child gets their first phone. 10 years old in 3 months, 10.3. The average age when they get their first phone. So if this is the average, you got some younger, you got some older, but this is pretty young, okay? Because they're on social media before they even have a phone. So if they don't have their phone yet, that means they're using another device, or they're using mommy's device or daddy's device to get on social media. Okay? So this starts way before 10, way before age 10. Now, take a look at this. This is just going to make your jaw drop. Okay? 40% of elementary kids have chatted online with a stranger. Of those, 30% texted the stranger. Oh my, oh my. 30% texted the stranger. And 15% tried to meet the stranger. This is frightening stuff. Frightening stuff. Just the first statistic alone is just an eye opener. Shocking. A stranger. So we're not talking about family, friends, peers, none of that. Someone they don't know. Okay, so we've got to monitor this. We can't wait for it to blow up in our faces. This is so critically important. We don't want to lose control. Technology is wonderful, but with every piece of technology, as we know, there are pros and there are cons to it. So what I have made it my mission, I started about 4 years ago researching internet safety, cybersecurity, and I really believe and know it's part of critical thinking. You have to be a critical thinker to be able to decide these, make these decisions, and we have to teach them how to build their critical thinking skills. So we have included, a series of wonderful children's books using the criteria that I went over earlier, the vivid illustrations, the alliteration, the advanced vocabulary, characters that evoke emotion. Because we wanted to make sure that these were the best books that parents can find. And right now, we are in a class by ourselves, meaning that we are the first to release children's books for as young as preschoolers. Okay? So librarians, teachers, preschoolers, early elementary, even elementary and even high school students would enjoy all of these books. It's about keeping your child safe and without it's almost as if they're learning without knowing that they're learning. So that's the secret. So Digital Dan is the keeper of this magical place, Cyber City, and he welcomes the children and teaches them about, protocols on cyber safety. He has a group of friends that supports this whole endeavor. So Padlock Picasso, yes, Picasso, as in the paintbrush. He comes on, he looks like a padlock, and he has a paintbrush that scribes different passwords that teaches children or readers how to build strong passwords and protect themselves. So that's Padlock Picasso's role. Appy Alex is all about those apps. We saw the statistics, right? They're on social media. They're getting involved in these apps and games with ease. And Appy Alex's job is to make sure that the reader knows the difference between an app that's not safe and one that is safe. And all of this is written in a way that is kid-friendly, fun, and uses alliteration. Now, the best friend for Appy Alex is smartphone Savannah. Well, she looks like a smartphone, and she basically does exactly that. Help you to develop your online healthy habits with the smartphone and how to use it, do's and don'ts, what to do, what not to do, how to have fun, and what to avoid. And then the last book here is Stanley the Snack Snatcher, which is a story about bullying. You have, it takes place in a school setting and with diverse kids. And in the cafeteria, you have Stanley who snatches the snack of a young girl named Susan. Well, Susan gets tired of it. You know, day after day, he's taking her snack. Day after day, she's trying to come up with some solutions on how to prevent this in a non-violent way. And she is using her critical thinking skills. And after several attempts, she finds a solution that works. And later they find friendship together. That's Stanley and Susan. Stanley the Snack Snatcher. So these are my gifts as an author that I'm bringing to the community, writing messages that I think are so very important for parents to be aware of and to be able to communicate in a way that is still positive, friendly, and fun, but yet really set the stage for some important lessons and conversation starters that we know our children need to be aware of. And we are the best person, and we should be the first to help them through this and help them get educated. We may not be the last, okay, but we should be involved in that process. So thank you. I'm going to open it up for questions in a minute. And just a reminder that our next session is next Wednesday, March 24th, on how math strategies can help kids and parents who struggle with reading. So thank you everyone who attended. I'll open it up for some questions.
There are no questions in the chat at this time.
Okay. Well, if you do have questions, we do have a way. Oh, there's a question coming up. Okay.
I'd like to know what is your thinking? Because of course, a lot of kids have devices. And I've had people ask me, well, what do you feel about them always having a device? What's wrong with reading a regular book? I'm like, are they reading? At this point, let's take the win, they're reading. What's your take on that?
Well, are you speaking of using the device for reading a book versus like maybe an electronic feed?
No, to read a book.
Yeah, well, you know, hey, looking back, I'm a big proponent of hard copy books. And I know my children, when the devices came out, we did want to shift over to the device because we felt that they can get hundreds and hundreds of books, right? And it would be a lot cheaper. But after about a month, they let go of the devices. They said there was something about turning the pages of a story and just really getting involved in it. And even went so far to say the smell of a new book. I don't know, but
I agree with that one.
Yeah. Oh, you agree with that? Is it like the smell of a new car, the smell of a new book? So even cracking it open, it was just the whole experience and the kinesthetics around it. And, you know, our books are like treasures. So it just becomes something of possession. The other thing they told me is that they want to be able to read it over and over again and have it and hold it. So we, you know, I'm going to say it depends on the child. So if you have a child that wants to read hardback, paperback books, and that's going to motivate them, and they can have their own library, go for it. But if you have a child that prefers to read in the digital form, let them, as long as they're reading. I think that's our mission there. So it just really depends on what's going to motivate the child at home. Good question. Excellent. Okay.
Are there any others? Well, if not, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed today's class entitled Read Up to Build Up, Building a Reading Community, forgive me. Our classes are recorded and can be found on our YouTube channel. That's tinyurl.com/face2YouTube. And the link will be shared in the chat. Will you stop recording, please? Please visit our website at CPS Parent